staying with the routine of one thing a day. You know, well, we got all this cut out. It's a pretty good cut. I cut that with the Sawzall. I don't know, I guess there's 3 spot welds right there on that piece. You really can't tell. It's like it's almost double thickness there. I don't know. See that? It's got a crack in the other side of the metal. I don't know if it's double paneled or just the way it is, the way it looks. It cracked it on that side. So it must all be the same thing. Cracked that one too. Anywho, we got that off. Now we can hammer on that and make it look pretty decent and do whatever we got to do to make room to make this fit. Now here's what we're running into. See there, you can get the bolts. I really didn't want to do all that, but you know, some people might call it cobbling or something like that, but I was able to run that Sawzall through there and didn't hurt nothing, thankfully. But I was back and forth watching it pretty good. You know, I had this little short Sawzall blade to kind of get around the tight spots, but it ain't really tight other than right here on the top. Then the sides, you know, you got to watch out for this water neck right there or whatever. And then on this side, you got to watch out for that vacuum line for that fuel rail. But there it is. It's cut out. You can see, now we can see that gap. Look there. Quite a bit of a gap. Now, I'm going to run them bolts on down on the top. I don't want to break that bell housing. You know, it's got a bolt hole there, but it's gone. I think it's gone. Yeah, they didn't drill it or nothing. I don't think. Or I ain't got it lined up one or something. There might be a hole that I'm missing there. I don't know. I think the dowel pins are the holes that ain't got nothing in them. That one might have something in it. I don't know if we can see with that phone or not. Can't really see with all that dirtiness. There might be a bolt that goes in that. Hopefully they are. It'll just help us out. There's our gap on one side. You can see it's pretty daggone tight. You know, but it's not there. And then this side, it's definitely not there. I think we'll try to put a bolt in that if a bolt goes in it. I'm trying to see if you can see. It might have a hole in it. So, whatever it is, we got the firewall cut. That's pretty hard to do for just a little old simple 4-cylinder motor. You could put your power steering pump back on there now if you really wanted to. You know, if you had to or whatever. But they do make a power, just like a power assist. It's electronic power steering. I like easy steering. I like easy brakes. I like some cool air. They make those little $500 kits from Amazon for AC, but you know, it's an electric, something that it just, it's electric and it pulls on it to where it'll hook up to your heater box or whatever, universal fit, and you have something. It's better than nothing. Sometimes they have problems out of it for the simple fact that, you know, it's electric, and sometimes you gotta, people just say, well, you know, I'll put a kit on it, it should work. I mean, it's anybody. They buy parts, they should work. Sometimes you gotta fix it to make it work right. You gotta use a thicker condenser sometimes, and it has to have a fan on it sometimes to where it'll pull air across it, especially if you're sitting in traffic. You know, you're not gonna expect that AC to work 100% unless it's got an electric fan on it, you know, just like the motor. It ain't gonna get cool unless it's got something blowing over it to let the heat out, you know. Same thing with the AC. So they make just a condenser. You can mount it any old where, but you gotta put a fan to it. You know, people are trying to make a Monet painting. Everything looks like it's just melted together. I want a bolt in it. I want a clip. You know, some of these panels are hard to figure out because they got clips and stuff. You're like, why can't you just make it to where it's got a screw on it that holds it? But whatever. We're trying to make something work here. It's electronic fuel injection, but it's still hopefully better than what we had, and it'll run, and it's more dependable. Granted, 20-year-old truck, it's got to be to where you can work on it. You know, it ain't going to be perfect. It'll hopefully last for a period of time to where, you know, you can figure it out eventually. if there was a problem, or get some more parts off of something else and put on it to make it work, to make it right, you know, as right as you can. Granted, it's not a new vehicle, but it's got to be better than what we had, right? Here's what we got going on. You know, I cut all that with a Sawzall. I had to pat myself on the back on that. That don't look too bad. I did have to cut it sideways to get it started, but that's the only way I could get it done. Now, imagine this. It'll be a little bit thicker. It'll come back out a little bit further. And we'll see what it takes to bend this up and roll that edge to where it has a lip to where we can set something. Maybe bend this. It's coming back, so you're going to have more material here, but you can bend it here, hopefully, and make it work. But we got to have a way to get to these bolts. So now that we can see, you know, you may have to pull all that back, get it back as far as you need it, and then just have a piece of, like, they make that, I don't know if they call it butyl tape. It's just like a rubber or like a tar kind of stuff they put over that for like a hole, just like this stuff, just like that sound deadener. And you can just stick that over it, that way you get to the bolts. For me, personally. That's kind of what I'm thinking there. But yeah, I'm thinking we need to get that baby bolted all the way together, get it picked up. That gives us all the room. I could have just kind of keep beating on it, I'm just done. Let's get it going. Let's get it cut. That's decent. That's not a bad cut. We'll put all the bolts in it. We'll tighten the bolts up. See exactly how high we got to lift it with the cherry picker. We can start working on motor mounts. Now this is kind of like a step-by-step of what a person would go through to put one of these little motors in. You know, it might be the first, you know, 2.2 Ecotech swap that's going to be made available. Now, you know, can I tell you everything I'm going to have to do unless I'm doing it and you can see it? No. I don't have a way to record or nothing, but hopefully, now we're going to strip this whole wiring harness out of this thing. I'm going to put that whole wiring harness off that car into this truck. That concludes the boxes, and then we'll have to figure out a way to tie the headlights, taillights, and all that into the box coming off the truck, and the wiring harness as far as from the taillights, the fuel pump, and the headlights, and make all that work. We'll have to get in a Haynes manual or something and say this is the wire that runs this and hook it up to the relays. And it's got an electric fan that goes to this motor, so it don't have a clutch style fan. You know, a clutch style fan, you know, it's got like a clock spring in there. If they get so hot they lock up and they pull air. Sometimes they pull air all the time. That's what you run into, like if you got a bad fan. If it don't lock up and just stay locked up, it don't have to be replaced. But if it gets to where it don't lock up, you know, it's just spinning free on the hub, the fan won't work to pull air. Just like sitting in traffic. If it's too hot and that fan don't kick on, it'll overheat. Same thing with that AC box, if you was to get one. Now, you could build a fan shroud to put over that radiator and then mount your fan up. That way it would pull air a little bit better, because they have a shroud that goes with the clutch fan. That's the only way they work good. They got to have the shroud on them or they still won't work. It'll get hot. So we'll figure out something and we'll see what we can get done here. We're going to keep pushing. So there's our gap. That's what we're fighting. We're fighting the gap right now. And once we get her pulled up tight, which I can tighten these bolts on down now that I can actually get to them. But when I do that, you know, we've got enough room to stick a long extension in there. Let's be honest, if I have to do all this, and this is quite a bit, let's be honest, this is quite a bit of stuff to do to something to, you know, get something put in it to get it to work. It's paid for, but, you know, you're going to keep throwing money at electronic parts that obviously you cannot replace or fix or whatever. And it's got a limp mode to where it's going to make the throttle potty not work. With the gas pedal, that's $500 to do those every time. You know, and you take it to a mechanic and they're like, oh, yeah, it needs this, needs this, needs this. I put that on there brand new. Can you honestly guarantee it? No, they can't. And they won't. I used to do mechanic work. I can't guarantee nothing like that. You could have another problem making it not work. With this body control module being the problem, you know, there you are. I think it has a BCM, but it's different kind of. It ain't gonna make it to where it ain't gonna run. You know what I mean? So we'll figure it out. But that's a day, and then hopefully we can get this thing pulled together. Let's check it out from the front side. Hey, what are you doing? Yeah. And then, like I say, we might have to get a smaller brake booster, because that it's got that air box. If you look back at that other motor, it's got that big air box. That's part of making it run good. Now, I'm gonna try to hook that EVAP stuff up and all that. You know, when you get into those race car harnesses and stuff like that, it runs great wide open. It don't run great just putting it around. You know, it's meant to be smashed on, holding it to the floor type of option. We're not gonna do that. You know, we're going to drive it at the speed limit, just enjoy it, you know. Hopefully everything you got, power brakes, you know, you hear DD Speed Shop, you suffer more. How much suffering for pleasure are you after? I don't want to suffer. I don't want none of that. I want to be able to start it on a key, take it to where I'm taking it, and come back. You know, that was part of what they were talking about. You know, he put 1,800 miles on a gasser, you know. How much suffering are you willing to do for pleasure? I don't want to suffer. I don't want none of that. I don't want to do this. You know, I would rather just be able to start it and enjoy it. It's been sitting for a while now. But, you know, when they don't make electronic parts for it, you got to figure out different options. You know, so it's nothing cheap. You know, if it's just a little simple, cheap scan tool, you could say, let me pay GM some money and, you know, just, or I can send it off in the mail, get it, whatever, and get it back for 20, 30 bucks, 100 bucks. It'd be different. It's not like that. And you gotta have, it's a lot. You gotta have a lot of stuff. Let's put it like that. But, process elimination. Now we got a hole in there. There's no restriction from going back or up. I mean, there might be with going up, you know, obviously you got this plug or whatever that goes to, probably something for the coil packs. Excuse me. And then, you know, you got to have room to change the oil. That's the oil canister cap right there. So we got to make sure we can change the oil on it, take care of it a little bit. I mean, it ain't gonna be spectacular, but you know, we got to be able to get in here and hook all this stuff back up. You know, it's got to have room. And that's getting to where it's going to be up under the cowl. So that's going to have to stay bent up. Look a little cobbled. Hopefully not too bad. You know, and we got to put all that stuff back in there too. And with all that wiring harness coming out, you can see, you know, it's got the ABS lines. Right there's where that other harness comes in at. So all this stuff's got to be peeled up. Right here's that stuff we've already put back. Now you can't get frustrated. You're going to have to take and pull it all back out. And then, you know, you have to leave some wiring harnesses in there, like the headlights and the tail lights and, you know, whatever else. So, and I don't think unhooking that that ABS will affect it any kind of way. Don't really care, okay? Don't care. I just need the brakes to be power brakes. It'll be like a manual style brakes. It'll have the vacuum or whatever. Now, we might have to change that out. There, you know, it's pretty tight right there. I mean, it looks like a lot, but it's tight. Once you get that manifold on there and you try to put that air box on there, you might be able to put a spacer on that air box and just bring it up a little bit. Want to hook all that stuff back up, is what I'm saying. You know, the more you can hook up, the less you got to figure out. If that makes sense. Now, in that heater box, we can take and show this heater box. This heater box, those brackets, those little studs sticking out, that's what you got to bolt back up to make all this work. Right here's your heater box, your coil. So you really need to change that out if you took a time to take it that far apart. It's a lot. And then you've got a lot of room to the back side of this. But you can't really, you know, you really can't cut into that. So, you know, if we need to make this fit somehow. We can't go, you know, we just say, well, you know, we stick it out there 2 inches and, you know, we got we got to be tight if we got to be tight. A lot of figuring. And let's be honest, you know, you could have got a thicker plate. Now that plate, you could have smacked on that firewall a little bit. What I put back there, you know, it bent that stud up on this right here. it had a wiring harness coming through the back side of that heater box, so we know we got that much room. Look at the thickness of this wiring harness. You know you got that much room it can come back with that heater box going right back on there. And honestly, you need to put that heater box back on there for you. You can put that heater box up there and then see how far that firewall can come back. Up here, we don't care. Down here, we care. We need to be able to get to the bolts. I want to be able to get to the bolts. You know, if you got to weld it back in there with it all the way against the heater box, and then make you a little spot to where you can, you know, access panel to where you can pull it out to get to the bolts, whatever. You know, still that's going to be tight. You know, that dash comes and bolts up right here. Bolts up here. So, you'd have a lot to get in there to get to it, but, you know, at least you would be able to do it efficiently. And that motor, that transmission is going to come up against this right here. So you're going to lose room. And it already takes like a wobble extension to get in there for the bolts on the last one. So, with that being said, it's going to be tight. You could probably use a wobble extension, a really long wobble extension to get in there and tighten them up. But to hold on to them and tighten them, it's a lot. That's the day, guys. The process of elimination, one day at a time, one part at a time, one bolt at a time. And I'm taking you along with me. I mean, we're going to do what we can do every day. It's not every day sometimes, you know. But this is the process of elimination. We'll try to do one thing a day. If that's cleaning up, if that's picking up tools, whatever you got to do to keep picking at it, keep picking at it.